Hi, everybody. Welcome. Okay, so if you've been following us, this week we're supposed to be doing acrylics. Anyone have acrylics with them today? And if you don't, you can work at your own pace. If you're still working in watercolors like we were doing last week. Oh, great. Carol's got acrylics. Hi, Lily and Heather. How'd your watercolors come out? You guys were doing some really good stuff. Do you have acrylics today? Well, we're doing acrylics today. Great, great. I already laid down a wash and I did a simple sketch. So you can follow along or you can work on your own acrylic projects. Now, the thing with acrylic paints, they dry fast. They dry very fast. So you want to keep your palette wet. Lily and Heather, I just wanted to show you that I too use these, but these were for gouache. This is my color palette. I was doing some gouache projects. But for this project, my palette is going to be this. If you could see, I got it at a thrift store. It's a used like fondue plate or hors d'oeuvre plate. Works great for acrylics, oils, but you want to keep your paints wet. I have a little spray bottle, and I'll just shoot this or I'll shoot my paper because acrylics dry, and when they do dry, the only way you can get them out of anything like your clothes is with scissors. It's a plastic paint, so you're painting with plastic. And it has a matte sheen. It's not like tempera paint where it has a flat surface when it dries. This one will have a bit of a shine to it. Hey, Jay, are you doing acrylics with us today? Welcome. So what I did was I just laid down a wash. Now, the thing with acrylics, it's pretty forgiving. Acrylics in watercolor are my top two favorites. Because since I laid this wash down, that wash is there. So it won't reactivate. I can wet it again, and it's done. So if you make a mistake in your painting in acrylics, you can fix it. You can't erase it, but you can cover it up. Acrylics is great. You could do texture work with acrylics if you want to paint with a palette knife. Generally, I will sketch out in a watercolor pencil. So when you are painting, that watercolor pencil will dissolve and it won't be in your painting. It'll just mix right in. So this is a flat brush, which was one of my favorites. They have angled flat brushes. I don't have one right now, but those are great. These are great for lines and making flat area, filling in flat areas of color. Now, a broad brush like this is what I used just to put on that wash in the background. You can also, this is a fan brush. Fan brush is good for blending. If you're trying to blend in colors, fan brush is very good for if you have two colors and you want to make a transition like a sunset. You can never have enough rags. This is a Filbert. A Filbert brush is like a flat brush, but the edges are rounded. These are great for making soft edges like clouds and whatnot. And then you have a round. A round is good if you go on lightly. You can make a fine point, or more pressure, you can make a wider line. And you can have different size rounds. So if you want a finer line, You can go to a smaller one. Okay, so I had laid down a wash before class just so that we didn't have to sit here and watch the paint dry as it. But now it's a little cool. You can fill your paper if you put a wash down. So anybody have questions about mixing colors? Because that's kind of important. You know, that first month we talked about colors. That's going to be important because a lot of times when you do get your acrylic paints, you're just going to have these basic colors. So it's up to you to mix them to get the color you want. So I got this like sepia mustard tone background, and I just mixed a little brown with yellow and white. I could have added a tinge of red if I wanted to make it warmer, but I was happy with this. Wasn't sure what exactly I was going to draw, but I figured, okay, I'll sketch out a character. You folks can come along. If you guys have any questions about how to get started on this. Yeah, I tape it down. You don't have to, but it keeps your paper secure. And then when you're done, you can peel it off, makes a nice border. I suggest 8 by 10 is a good size to start with. I also have, anyone know what a canvas panel is? I'll be right back and I'll show you. So a canvas panel, they sell them in 5-packs, but it's a little panel like this, and it's canvas. I'd recommend students get an 8 by 10, because then if you do a piece that you do like, 8 by 10 frames are easy to come by. So you can easily pop one out and just pop this back in. But the canvas is good to practice on. And then once you get more comfortable, the canvas, the stretch canvas on wood bars is good because that has bounce. So when you paint, there's a little give on the surface and it allows a little more natural feeling to the painting, which is real nice too. Okay, so let's get started. Anybody lay their wash down yet? Remember, keep your paint brushes wet. And in addition to the spray bottle I have back here, I have one bottle for cleaning the brushes to rinse them out. And this was clean water, and one to start a brush fresh. But you can paint, just remember, once that acrylic dries on that brush, it's the only way to get that out is if you want to cut the tip of that brush off. So I'll fill my paper. It's still kind of cool. So that means it's relatively damp, but I'm going to go ahead anyways. So I mixed this color right here. And I'm going to start with this. This is going to be my solid, my base. Once again, I like that flat brush because it can give me a sharp edge if I want that, and I can fill in a broad surface. It's pretty versatile. You don't have to move around too much with it.
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
How do we mix colors?
Well, do you remember that first month we talked about the color wheel? And we talked about complementary, analogous colors. Okay, so what color are you wanting to mix? Always good to have this nearby. It's very helpful. Okay, so
They said
suppose,
not sure, just want to know where we're supposed to mix and how.
okay, so do you have a palette? They have paper palettes. You could use a glass surface. This is my palette. So you can mix it on this because you could do it like a watercolor palette, like what you had set up with your watercolor setup. You could do it with that. I like this because it gives you a little more freedom to blend. And if I was to add white to this, I can visually see how much white I want, and I can push it out or I can bring more in. And don't be shy about using paint, because if you don't have enough paint, your watercolor, your acrylics can be too thin and you'll get something that looks like watercolor. Did that help? Okay, good, good. Now, if you do your light acrylics too light, and you're going to get that translucent effect, and it's going to be like watercolor, which there's nothing wrong. Some instructors were saying, oh, well, that's not what we want. Well, it could be. You know, you could be going for light watercolor, light acrylics. You may want that translucent, and if you don't like it, you can always build up on it. It's, like I said, acrylics, they're forgiving. Because if I came out here and maybe I painted something that I didn't like, and it, in my opinion, it was wrong, it was, you know, went outside of the line, there's ways to fix it with acrylic, because you can, it'll, once it dries, I can go back over it and fix it. But if you add too much texture to it, that's the only thing that can do it, that can make a little hiccup for you if you have too much and it's too heavy. But texture can also work for you. There's different things you can do, like there's gesso, which some people paint and they just paint with gesso at first, and it gives your paper a rich texture. You can make bumps on it. You can actually like carve into it. I did a cactus character and I used a fork. I put gesso down and I used a fork to make the lines in the cactus, and I let that dry. So when I did paint it, when the light hit the side of the painting, it created those grooves, giving it a more dimensional look. I'm not painting very opaque. You can see my lines coming through. To me, it adds to the creativity of it. I personally like, when I look at some of Chuck's drawings or paintings, I like to see his rough lines, because it shows you the thinking process of the artist. It shows you how they're getting to where they're going at. If you have any questions, please feel to chime in. You could either ask it verbally or you can text it in chat, and if I don't see it, Scott will. So when you're painting, keep in mind that your strokes on the paper can be seen. So you want to follow your design. You want to follow it. So that's going to take a little bit of time to dry. So you know how I was mentioning that acrylics dry fast? You can add, it's called a retardant. You can add a liquid to acrylics to make it more fluid-like and not dry as fast. But just keep in mind that it'll take longer for your painting to dry. And what also works to help with the fluidity, if you don't want to add water, but you want to thin out your paint, hair gel. If you get a cheap hair gel and you add it to acrylic paint, that will help the consistency of the paint, will smooth it out, and it won't dry as fast without adding water. It's a cool little cheap trick. And it makes your hair look stylish. So I'm just going to come back here and go heavier on some of my lines. I kind of want to keep some of my lines visible just so it'll help me find them again when I need to come back to them. So last week we were doing watercolor again along with ink wash. I really would like to see if you guys want to share your finished pieces. I was telling a friend of mine how some of you guys were really getting into it and your stuff was pretty cool. Hope you guys are having fun. You guys shouldn't be, don't be, enjoy this. If you make a mistake, that's how we learn. You can always correct it. Now, I can't stress that enough with acrylics. Acrylics and watercolor I like. Oils I like too, but it's more work to set them up. Gouache is nice, but gouache takes a bit of time to master. So I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. And if you have a spray bottle, don't forget to spray your palette once in a while to keep that paint from drying. So as that's drying, I might start another project so that just keep making art.
Darrell, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about adding hair gel to
Yeah.
kind of smooth out the acrylic. A while back, I knew an artist. He told me that he would use Windex with acrylic. I was just wondering if you've ever tried that.
I have not. And what did he say the same thing?
Yeah, he said it would smooth out the paint.
Yeah. And what also that's good to know. And that's the thing about doing art. You can try different things. Egg tempera. Their egg whites are added to the paint to give it that sheen. I'm not sure if the yolk was used as well, but there's like all kinds of stuff. And hair gel is just one thing I picked up on, and I tried it, and it made your paints smoother. It went further. You didn't have to have as much water, and it kept the same consistency of acrylic paint without watering it down too much. But I'll have to try that Windex. Okay, so here I have another piece of board. I generally like to put a wash down. It's like a middle value, something to start with, because a white board can be very distracting, because that's your highest highlight already on the paint on your canvas is white. So if you knock that back down, then you could push and pull your values forward and backward. Because if I had left this white, and if I wanted to put highlights on his nose, his cheeks, maybe when I finished his eyes, and I put a little dab of white with a little bit of color, it would be competing with that white background and wouldn't have that much of an impact, as much as it would if I had a toned background. So I'm going to start with a wash again. So if your brush is a little too wet, that's again what's your rag is good for, is to unload some of that moisture onto that rag. Once again, this is my art shirt. So if I don't want to use a rag, I got my shirt. So find an old long sleeve t-shirt, shirt that you like and you're comfortable in. And every time you're going to do a painting and you know it, paint, charcoal drawing, it gets a little messy. It's not like sitting at a computer, click, point, click, point, click. You don't have a stylus, which to me it's one of the nice things about art. It's tactile. You get your hands in it, you get dirty. It's like playing, it's like virtually the difference between playing outside and then playing on a virtual baseball field. So here I am, I'm just putting down a wash. It's a little thin, but I just want tone. I could have created a different tone, but I already have the paint mixed. It's a very light tone. If we had more time, we could spend a couple, 2-3 weeks on acrylics. I wish oils would be a whole other thing, but that may have to be done in like an in-class setting, because it's a process. Lots of steps. So you see how I have that texture? Some of that texture is gonna probably bubble up though. So I'm just gonna add more paint. Now, if you want that texture, great. I kind of like it, so I'm gonna keep it. Mine, some people want their drawing to be perfectly flat. To me, it adds character. To me, it's reminiscent of wood, like a wood grain, which I painted before too, which I did with gouache, but I kind of developed my own techniques along the way. Experiment is what this is all about, folks. That you're doing this for yourself, doing it for your mom, you're doing it for a friend, you want to make a card, you want to make a birthday gift for someone. It's experiment. There's no right or wrong. This is your art. This is your world. You create it. And my paint's coming along. It's still drying though. All right, so I'm just gonna let this sit for a bit. Yeah, no, I haven't heard that, Scott, but I will try that. Windex.
Yeah, I guess it helps to smooth it out.
And what else also helps with that too is, the quality of the paint. The more expensive the paint, the finer, the more true your pigments are going to be. But for all intents and purposes for this class, inexpensive brushes can still make a nice piece of work of art. Inexpensive paints still can make a nice piece of art. The only thing I suggest is your paper. If you think you're going to want to keep it, try to go for acid free. Because I was going to paint on cardboard. When you can paint on cardboard, just make sure you prime it first. So you'd want to, you can even paint oil on cardboard just for practice. Just prime it with a gesso or an acrylic so that the oil's not absorbed into the cardboard. But if you want to keep it, cardboard is not very acid free. It will just crumble and deteriorate. A lot of my charcoal drawings I do on newsprint because it's inexpensive. But if I really like it, I just know it's not going to last very well. All right, that's might be dry enough. All right, so we'll continue with the example. Make sure you dab your brushes. Don't let them sit out and dry out because that'll ruin them. Okay, so since I have this camel, this color, now I want to, that's like a middle tone, so I want to push it back a little further. So I may want to, just add a little darker shadows. So I may want to add brown to this. So Liliana and Rose, this is for you. So having a palette like this allows me to add paint to it. And I can mix it in. See, I'm slowly pulling that brown over to make another shade. Not all of it. I'm looking for that shade of what I think will be right. You remember how we were doing the watercolors where I said sample it on the side of your page? I'm going to do the same thing here. Not mixed too well, so it's kind of streaking. There you go. That's a better value. Okay, that's enough just to knock it back to start giving it form. So now I'm going to start carving this form out. Just make sure you have enough paint to do what you need to do. Because sometimes if you need to mix more in, that little bit of difference of mixing that more in can change the value of it. So you could see it's still kind of wet, and so now it's dragging. And since we don't have 2 hours to wait for it to dry, I'm just going to go with it. Like I tell you guys to do, just go with it. Have fun. And I gotta tell you, I'm not really digging this right here on his cheek. This area right here, the paint's a little too thick. It's got a little impasto going on, which means it's creating texture, which I'm not digging. So I had the brush loaded up too much. So I'm gonna try to pick that up. Take the excess, put it on a rag, come back in again, pick some more of it up. Liking it better than what it was. And like I said though, it can be fixed. Once it dries, I can come back and clean it up. So what I'm doing now, it's more like a wet on wet technique, since that base undercolor is not completely dry. So I'm going to come in with my fan brush and see if I can soften some of these edges. So as I was saying before, you can fix stuff. So I'm coming back in with more of that original paint. It's still wet, so if I put it in and apply it in such a way that I could clean up some of those lines. So it's looking a little better. But that's what I was saying about acrylic, is you can fix things. You're not stuck with it. You can push and pull your paint. If you wait, you're not going to do it all in one day. So if you wait, you can come back and you can, once it's dry, you can come back over things and fix them. It's forgiving. Unlike gouache, where gouache is, if you push and play with it around too much, it'll start getting muddled and messy. And remember to clean your brushes, because if you don't clean your brushes regularly, you're going to start muddling up your paints. Yeah, this is still wet, so. Now just wait for this to dry. So you can sketch in with your paint. You don't have to use, when I do oil paintings, I sketch in oil. So, or it depends, or you could, if I had a wash on there, you could draw with the back end of your brush and you could do like a scrape out technique. So now I started this one, but now I'm just gonna wait for this to dry and I'll bounce back between 2 or 3 paintings. Well, that's the thing about these workshops. We run out of time in the middle of enjoying this stuff. Well, hopefully when we do in-person teaching, and if you're local, that will be nice. Okay, so I'm gonna work on the white of his eyes. I'm gonna jump right to it. But I'm not gonna make him completely white. I like the color in the background, so I'm gonna make the white a bit translucent so that background color can show through. There's something about not having something completely perfect and finished, that tells you that, you know, art is always changing, progressing. I talked to Chuck and he said, you know, some of his cartoons, he liked them, but now that he's him, he would do things differently. And that's what true with art. You'll look at something that you really like, and then later on you'll go, you know what? I could have done that differently. With digital art, it's a lot easier now. So I threw some white down. I'm even going to pull some of this into it. I'll pull some of my background color into it. Because that keeps it harmonious, keeps your painting harmonious, keeps your colors. It doesn't look like it's a jigsaw puzzle where everything's separate. It keeps everything connected. Remember when we were talking about movies and they had colors? Colors mean stuff. There's a meaning to why a color was used. So, kind of the same thing. If there's a reason why you're picking the colors you pick. Your warm colors, cold colors. So I don't know if you could see here, but see this white right here? It went further down than I wanted it to, which is okay, because I can wait, let it dry, and I can fix that. You can adjust it. I don't have to keep it that way. But I'm going to try to do it when it's still wet, just because we're short on time. So if you're going to do something like this and you want to fix something, don't over fudge it. So get that paint, find that spot you want to fix, put it down, and be done with it. And just leave it. Because if you overwork it, then it starts getting messy. You can see it pulled some of that white in there on that spot. That's fine. It's part of the process, you know. Sometimes you'll find you can control things, and then sometimes you find happy accidents where something happens you weren't expecting it to, and you're all, hey, I kind of like that. So I'm going to work on his nose right now. And I'm not going complete black. I'm going to go with brown. And if I wanted to make that brown even darker, I might even add like a green, a dark, like a forest green or a purple to it. But I'm not going pure, simple black. Going with the brown because it's going to keep that warm. I could go black, but then if I went completely black on his nose, the whole drawing, that would be so harsh in contrast to the rest of the drawing that the only thing you would look at would be his nose, because it'd be so just this big, like a spilt ink on my paper. So as you're painting, these are kind of things you want to think about of, well, if I put black down now, you know, I would have to go back in with black and touch up all over so that it balanced the page back out. So it wasn't just this big black spot on his nose. And don't be afraid to paint. Put that brush down and own it. Put that brush down and go, I'm putting a line here. Just be confident in where you want this to go. And the more you work with the brush, the more you work with charcoal, pencils, crayons, pastels, the more you work with it, the more you know your tool and how it's going to react to you if you make a mark. If you want a line to be thin to go to wide, if you want it to do something that you know it can do, and you know it will do it for you just by doing it enough, just by drawing, just by practicing enough. And once again, the foundations of any good art is solid drawing. In animation, that was one of the principles, remember? Good, solid, appealing drawing. Appeal. It has to be a good, solid drawing to start with, because it doesn't matter how much paint you put on a drawing, if the structure is bad and the drawing doesn't hold up on its own, it's just going to be paint thrown on top of that. Paint is another tool to make something, to add color, to give more vibrance, to give another dimension, but it all starts with a good drawing. Okay, so now I got brown. We're still pretty damp on the paper. Well, what I could do, now this is where the round brush comes in. All right, I'll use my Filbert. Filbert, once again, is the brush that's like a flat brush, but it has round edges. So I can start hitting up my edges and redefine my lines. Things are still wet, so I might pull paint where I don't want to pull it. All right, let's go for it. And if your painting goes off the edge of the paper, follow it. Don't stop. See where it ends at this tape? Don't stop there. Go. Because that, by you stopping, it'll look like you stopped before you had to.
Avery would like to share a final drawing from um, something they shared last week.
Okay. Absolutely.
Give me a moment to pull.
No worries.
So this is the sketch that I shared last week, and I finished the drawing. So here's that.
Nice. Good job.
But yeah.
I like it. And what'd you color it in?
I did this in Procreate. So yeah.
Good job. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Very nice. So we are running out of time. So as we're dealing time, anybody else have watercolors, anything they got to share, or even on this project?
Can I share my project this time?
Absolutely. Wow, look at that. Is that acrylic?
Yep, and it's supposed to be Darth Vader.
No, I know who it is. I could tell who it is. That's great.
Thank you.
It's a great start, see? And you got a lot. You just did it in this last hour.
Yeah,
You got a lot done. Good job.
thank you.
Thanks for sharing. That was awesome. Wow,
Yeah.
you got a lot done in an hour. I like it.
Well, mine's not actually, really, well, one, it's nowhere near finished, and B, it's not acrylics or watercolors, it's just kind of
That's
a drawing.
okay.
Oh my gosh, some might work with me
making-
here.
You're making
There we
art.
go.
That's all that matters. You're joining us and you're making art.
Actually, it might be better if I just, yeah, there we go.
Okay, so you're doing a figure study.
Not really. I've already, well, I'm not quite sure. It's a drawing of an elf character.
Okay. I can see you. It's coming along good too. You got your proportions down. Well, next week, I don't know if I'll be. I think I might be teaching next week, or Lee might be taking the class. I'm not sure. But next week, I'd love to see it. The next time I see you, I'd love to see the finished piece of your elf. Good job. Anybody else? Tater.
Here's Tater.
Just a sketch concept sheet of a tiefling monk I'm working on.
Very cool. I want to see a finished piece of that. That looks great.
Thank you.
Here's Liliana and Heather Rose.
Well, first of all, we wanted to share our finished watercolor pictures.
Ah, look at you show off. Look at you. That's awesome. Good job.
And then here's all the roses.
Wow. Bravo, bravo. I'm glad you finished it. Good job. Wow, look at that one. That's good. I like your choice of colors. You took it a different direction. That's nice. You too. Look at that. Are these the acrylic ones?
Yeah.
Those are nice. Those are nice. You guys, have you worked with acrylic before?
No, this is my first time.
Really? That's good for your first time. Yeah, just make sure you keep your paints wet and your brushes wet, because that'll really mess you up. And also, if you get paint on your clothes or stuff like that, it won't come out. Good job, everyone. Anyone else have anything else to share?
Here's Jay.
All right, Jay, what you got?
Hello,
Hi.
I have my painting and a drawing, so here's my painting. It's really small, but yeah.
Was that today?
Yeah,
I like it. I like the strong silhouettes in the foreground.
thank
I like your gradient in the background. Nice. Nice.
you. And then I have these just doodles of people. I don't know if you can read who they are, but
No, I can't. Is that from today? Oh, is this today's?
yeah, it's Liliana, Avery, and Tater.
Look at that. That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's fun. All right. We got to be signing off. Anyone else got anything to share before we go? Is that it, I think?
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks for showing up, you guys. Remember, if you guys can make a donation, these classes run off of donations. So we can offer these classes to help cover supplies and overhead and to be able to offer art to everybody. Good job. Hope to see you guys next week. Thank you for coming. Aloha.
Thanks, Darrell.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Scott.
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.